Good morning, this is Brian Whitten and ET Art. I did have a cause to follow up on my last video because it was really quite a daunting situation to leave you all where we have left. I have had further thoughts about the processes we're being told about. Before I go on, if you're 12 years old or younger, could you go and get your parents or guardians and have them watch the video first? If you're 18 years old or older, you might want to go and get your parents. I don't want to go back over repetitively the cycles of Earth. I did say in my last video that the galactic event, if we want to call it a quasar or something like that, whether it swept across all of the planets or whether it swept across one of them and then the problem occurred, what we're seeing is a mutation that took place across multiple. I'm seeing multiple planets be affected, not one. And the reason I say that, it's not necessarily that the case though, because it depends on who's on the planet and what your background and genetic background was. The mutations that are taking place are in actual fact different between each race. So I'm not playing the race card here or doing anybody better than anybody else. I'm just saying purely and simply we are seeing in the cycles themselves and the way they've been designed. I will discuss this cycle. The cycle that we're coming up to now that puts, after Christmas, our Earth is said to be standing straight. The next 6 months of preparation, I've already gone through all that, the moving of land masses. I will cover that a little bit later. But I wanted to just say that the situation is that when the Earth is standing straight like this, the moon is moved in and out towards the sun to provide the seasonal changes, because you do not get them on the tilted, you get them on a tilted Earth. That's why we're getting summer, winter, spring, etc. The straight axis, you do not have it. We have been told in multiple places, even on this parchment, if we go to the top of this parchment, that the sun itself here, as you can see, when the moon is moved at its closest point here, you're not seeing, it's nowhere near as close here. This is our winter months where it comes in and at its closest. It's not the same size as the sun. If we were sitting, and I'm talking about this as being on the equator here, we're not going to get a full eclipse on the entire globe with the moon. That's not the purpose here. It's protecting the very equatorial parts of Earth, right? So when the moon is at its closest to us, it is in actual fact covering and going backwards and forwards, whether it's close or far away, that very equatorial portion of Earth. But in actual fact, it's actually what's driving the coolness and, etc. of the air temperature of Earth. It's actually the moon from that point, when we stand straight, where that occurs. But the moon never moves close enough. And that is this parchment that tells us the problem that are bestowed on some of the races that are here on Earth. We may think we are all the same, but we are not. We are actually being told our genetics were all created on 3 different planets, not one. I will show you where we are seeing that later, and I wouldn't even see that we're possibly seeing that same thing reflected here. And that be the case. We might be seeing a reflection of there being 3 planets here. But we are certainly seeing here with the 9 hands here, and the last hand pointing at the pelvic region, the very same thing, that ovulation between the certain races, when the moon is never ever getting close enough. They are saying above the Mediterranean, I'm one of those people, that is my lineage, my ancestry is England, that we can't breed next year at all. It's not this. This is the races they're talking about here that have this issue, this ovulation one in every 5 months here. That is the races here. What races are we talking about? Well, we're talking about Egypt, so we're talking about the Middle East. I want to show you something, and I certainly don't mean to sound racist, but I want you to move in here and look at the face here. All the Egyptians have eyes depicted like this. It's not, I don't mean to be rude, but they're Asian eyes. Now this is what we're getting told. It's the Asian people and the people from the Middle East that are having this issue in the new cycle. The Northern Europeans, one of which I am, we're being told we can't breed at all. That's the purpose of the other planet. I'll cover that in a minute. And some astrophysical things that I'm seeing that I think I should tell people because, quite frankly, it doesn't make sense in certain respects of the mass of that planet. I will go through that and the mass of the Mars as well and show you that because our last video was Mars the Moon. And I want to explain a few things there. But that's what we're seeing here. That's why the ninth hand here is pointing at her pelvic region. And we are seeing the very same representation here, the peak of these, and the peak of here being a count of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Every 5th month, that is when ovulation occurs. And it is the Asian and Middle Eastern races that have that issue. I want to show you one more thing. And as we see in the parchment, we are seeing in this crop circle the very same explanation in that we are seeing a 5-month cycle. So in other words, if we were looking at this circle here now being the moon in front of the sun, but on the equator, we're talking about a straight axis, and the moon is going to be going along in line with the axial plane of Earth, the rotational plane or the axial plane of Earth. So that's what's going to happen. It's going to cross on that portion. So we're talking about eclipse on the equator every day, every time it's going to be like that. It's going to be looking like that from us, our perspective. If we were standing on the equator, we will not be standing on the equator at all because right on the equator is the very, very strong electromagnetic field. Once again, we are getting told that these, and not always just are they mutations either, but putting ourselves within a realm that where we haven't evolved can create problems just purely for the fact you're there and it's not where you grew, and those effects. We are certainly seeing these mutations absolutely magnified by the strength of electromagnetic fields that we're in. But this one, like I said, this shows us the same thing. We're seeing the 5-month cycle of the moon between its closest, which is not quite close enough now to give us a full solar eclipse. If we had a solar eclipse in our current realm of rotation, it goes out to be exactly the same size as the sun, and that's how you know it's not going to be as close. At its closest, it's not close enough, and that affects some other races. And this is why I'm saying we are not as much as we get taught. We are the human race, but we are born and evolved for many, many millions of years, millions of years. Now, having said what I've just said about this very, very same crop circle, I've also said that this body here that we see, which is on, by the way, Planet X News. Okay, if you look that up on YouTube, that's where these we're being told about these things. Thankfully, there's people willing to probably risk things to get information out. And I did say that when we come back to saying that body that's near the sun now is in actual fact where we are going to be living. The Northern European races will not be able to breed. They don't, like I said, this isn't here to come here and kill us all. It's not what the whole issue here is. The whole issue is to come here and manage the planet's movement into this plane, and that planet is part of that process. And I said to you that this is the movement of that planet now, that we're going to see it in front of the sun, and it's going to be moved in, and I said it would take 3 months. That this line coming out was in respect that planet now, on the same diagram here, or the same display, we're seeing multiple stories. It's the same as the rocks. When we shine the light from one direction, we get a different image. We shine it from there, it turns into a face or something, or UFOs. It's the same thing. It's looking at it from a different perspective. And that is what has been difficult for the whole process, really, because there's more than one story in everything you're looking at. So in this instance, when we're looking at the big planet now, we're talking 3 months movement, and I said over 3 months it came in and went back out, and I started to think about that for a bit, and I started to think, well, that's absolutely going to get freezing cold for the whole Earth to be covered like that for a month. Well, 3 months, a process. And I started to begin to think about that, and I started then to think about mid-cycle, where the sun has gone, and I'm thinking, man, that's going to be really, really cold. And I gave it some more thought, and then there was something I saw that was a crop circle. And it was within a video, which I captured it like this. This was this image, I believe I downloaded from one of my YouTube, or from one of my group members. And I captured it, and I'll be honest, the guy who uploaded it I didn't actually see, so I'll be honest, I didn't get your permission. But what I'm talking about here is extremely important. So I'm moving on with that because I have to. It's a non-profit channel, this. So this is a lesson, and we're all getting. I'm getting the same lesson at the same time, maybe a couple of days before you guys. So when I'm thinking of what's going down, I'm certain of what is transpiring, thus I'll make another video. I'll move on. Before I move on with the image of the globe or Google Earth and discuss those temperatures that I was just talking about and the variations that we're going to see in that 3 months leading up to Christmas, I wanted to come back here, and I have discussed this in many other videos before. This was a screen capture off the Mystery History 2 channel, and it was to do with, I stopped it immediately because I by this stage knew of these 6,000 year cycles in and out to the inner and outer rings of rotation as shown on these plates. Here, the inner ring being where we are now, the outer ring being 40 million miles or thereabouts beyond Mars. This is the movement back in. So we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,000 years. And I've said to you that this cycle is, or I'd say 6,000 years, it's actually a 4,000 year cycle. This first 2,000 years here is shown at the E here that it's actually the end of the cycle. It's a 10-hour day. In other words, the planet is spinning very, very quickly. I won't go through all that, but to say, from the point there onwards, we are then beginning to see people put back on the planet here. This is Earth coming back in here and getting restocked with people. I wanted just to show that we're getting put on here, the order. So we're looking at Chinese people being put on here, and I say Chinese more than I say Asians. I'll show you why. Because I know that sounds, once again, it's hard to say this without sounding racist, because, you know, we're taught we're all the same. Well, we're not. We're getting told we're all on different planets here, and the electromagnetics of each and every system, or the rotating body within the magnetic fields, was affected differently. That's what the message is. So I've just got to go on that, what we're being told there. So this is more Chinese, and I'll tell you why. We also have the Great Wall of China. Such things we have down here, an Egyptian, we have a wrapped mummy. So we're talking about the Egyptians being put on here. Down here we have South America, this is a llama. But it's not in this cycle that they're getting put on, it's at the end. This is when we stand back up straight with Atlantis installed here. So we're still talking about the first 16,000 years when the Earth was going around the Sun in a clockwise direction. Still has to have Atlantis installed on the equator. It still has a strong horizontal beam of the Sun. They're not a developing race like us. So mostly what I want to take from this is just remember, if you could, the sequence. So we're going from China to the Middle East and then to South America. I just want you to remember what we're being shown there, those 3 places, and I'm going to go and look up Google Earth now and show you why I believe we're showing that sequence. So China, Middle East, South America. So if I bring this back to Google Earth now, and we start by looking at where we saw those sequences, China, the Middle East, and then South America, and then draw a line. Well, if we're looking at China here and Japan here, we've already discussed this before. This is an event, a very, very big event with a very big comet going that way. It was used to slow the planet from the 10 days that I just showed you in the last wall pictorial. It had 10-day cycle circles. That is actually the event that slowed the globe from that point. That is without doubt, and it's also marked from the line of longitude at the point of entry or point of location here. If you go up here, it's the very same line of longitude as the Tunguska event in Russia. Okay, so we're getting spots marked here, I believe, telling us what races were on what planets. So when we see that line, we are seeing a movement then, or certainly pointers from here directly across to the Mediterranean. This is where we are being told the problem exists. From here to the Middle East, and then from the Middle East it went to South America, which would be, you're either going to go to the bottom, to where the impact was at the bottom, or the impact at the top. And this is where I think we're actually getting told there were 3 planets. Not necessarily 3 planets either. We may have been a situation where what we are going to see now, maybe one of the planets wasn't a planet but a moon that was livable around the planet. And I'll show you why I think that's the case. I also think that the image that we looked at with the Egyptian parchment with the 3 people in varying sizes could also be reflective of the same thing, that one of them is not necessarily a planet but a moon. And I'll show you why I think that's the case. But so I would see that would be the situation there, that is telling us that the planets, there are multiple people and we were totally in different electromagnetic fields. But the problem that occurred was very, very different because our human genome is different. As much as we like to think it isn't, we're all human, we are not. We were actually very, very different. And that's what happens, you know. The problem was, it's 4 from here, I would expect. I don't mean to point anybody. I'm actually my ancestors are from England. I think what happens here is the English people or a given people had an effect that was inherent. So in other words, if you started breeding across the other places here, that the behaviour that we're seeing exhibited this total disrespect for the child. Doesn't matter what race it is. So, you know, how can you do that to a little baby? It's just, it's and it's totally unnatural. We've gone through that before, and it is unnatural. It's driven by this problem, a corruption within the human genome of a race of people, and it is inherent, and it takes quite some hundreds of years before it actually starts to poke up, and by that stage it's gone right through these other races, and that's what we're getting told is our problem. Okay, and that's why this whole sequence is, because the inherent behaviour affects every human, and the strike rate is about 75%. I won't go into telling you why. One thing you could say, why am I so certain that the moving of us across the plane and the moon not getting close to us affects the northern European races? That's one thing. But it's not just that too. There was an event recorded where an entire whaling village, I'm sure it was in northern Europe here somewhere, I could be wrong, and it could have been North America, but really the line we've just drawn hasn't really made a big difference, although, like I said, we do have an ocean separating these two, and this could also be, once we've drawn the line from China that way and divided that, we haven't actually drawn a line over on this part of the earth here. You know, we've separated this bit and North America. So South America, I would expect, say North America might have been the peoples from one planet, the South Americans are people from another planet, a long, long time ago, you know, a long time ago. when we come back to this northern, I'm sure it was a Norwegian village up here, what happened here was the whole village disappeared. Not the village itself, but the people within it, 230 people. To this day, it's never been understood as to why it happened. I would expect that that is exactly what happened, is within the straight world like this, with this thing around the ocean, across the equator, whales are not going to be able to exist. That's something we've been told and learnt through this process. And we're also told now, from this process, that you can't breed here next year. That the lineage of people that come from here 2,000 years ago, when the people were put back, which is what happened 2,000 years ago, or thereabouts, 2,500 years ago, that's what happened. People were put back on the planet, knowing full well the cycles here, knowing full well the sequences here. We were not supposed to be told what we are told. This is the problem. Well, this is a problem when the corruption is within the leadership. And I think that's what we also get told. We are at the cycle where the corruption is in the leadership at the end of the cycle. It makes civilizations go to hell. Going away from the plane on the other side, the corruption is there at the beginning, but as it moves further away, the plane of the rotation of Earth, it actually gets better. And that's why we're seeing a situation where it gets better. The leadership gets better because they don't have the same problem. Like I said, it's the bloodline there. It's telling us exactly what the problem is and where it stems from. So unfortunately, we've been told the wrong things. This is what we should have been getting told. All this is going to transpire in the next, 8 months. Very big things happening in less than 2 months now. But I wanted to mention that if a UFO lands there and the people that get out of the UFO are not grey aliens or reptilians, I'm not saying they couldn't get out. Yes, they could. But in this instance, they're not going to be those people. They're going to be people, the very same people as the people standing there. They're going to walk up and say, listen, I've got some bad news for you. But then on the other hand, I've got some good news for you. Next year, you won't be able to breed. The blood lineage of white people going into these villages isn't going down here. It's the opposite way. They're flat out keeping their people there. The modern world below here is drawing their young people out of their villages. They were going to pass away and not exist. A bloke comes down there with a UFO, gets out of the UFO, he's not, like I said, anything different than they that stand there. I'm telling you, next year you can't kill whales anymore because the whales aren't going to be here. You can't have children anymore. You're going to convince those 230 people there that are very, very good, they haven't got any of this problem within their bloodline, so they all decide to go. They wouldn't have gone in a shot. No problem at all. For the sake of the same argument there, we could go to what I believe is going to happen very, very shortly. And I'll go back to my country here. We know that Ayers Rock, or Uluru, which is a very, 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 very important site to the Aboriginal elders and the Aboriginal civilization that was here before white men came, it still is that way now. It's very, very much a part of their culture, and very, 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 very important part of their culture is the rock, Uluru. But in time, we've been told that this is going to be cut up here, lads. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but what's going to happen here is a UFO is going to land there, and they're probably going to go and talk to your elders in the centre here and say, g'day, it's going to be your elders getting out of the UFO here, walking up to you, and they're going to look just the same. They're more than likely going to say to you, listen, I have to get you to move back a little bit. We've got to lift the rock out of the way because we're going to cut through here, or we're going to cut there and move that way. That's what they're going to do, and this is going to happen within 2 months. That's what the message is. They have to move massive parts of land and lift it and slide it. We've gone through the processes of that, but I can assure you that that's, I can just imagine that happening, because in reality that's what we're getting told is going to happen. And as funny as that story is, I guess the other thing I'll tell you is I do live over on the northern New South Wales here, and once again, I'd gone fishing down here in the river where I live. I'll just insert a picture here for you of the spot. And there was, at the time, 3 Aboriginal boys on holiday from the centre over here, and they'd come over to visit their cousin, who was a blonde-headed, blue-eyed white boy. He's whiter than me, I can assure you. And I know that might sound racist, but it is. And it's like I said, it's a situation here where all these boys were. One of the Aboriginal boys came up and said, "Oh, can I have a load of your fishing rod, mate?" I said, "Yeah, cool," you know. And I sort of give him a few clues on how to keep a lure off the bottom of the river, because it gets a bit rocky and you hook up a fair bit. And I had a really good time. These guys were really good. They were 15, probably 12, 8, and 10 or something. They were just really, really good boys, really well behaved. I turned round when I left and said, "Hey, listen, lads," and they said, "What?" And I said, "I haven't heard none of you curse or swear since you've been here." I said, "That's pretty rare." I said, "You've given me faith in the youth of my country." I said, "All of you are really, really good lads. It was nice to spend time." That's what happened. So it was really nice, but it also gave me the thought. Incidents like that in my life has given me the understanding that this mutation of it's not natural, it's a totally unnatural thing, and it's driven by the magnetics of the system that we are currently in, but that manifests itself across like that. But like I said, when I see a situation where this manifestation can be one that can be born through the age of a person, not necessarily switched on from birth or anything. You could be 20 years old, not have even slightest possible situation here going down, and be 40 years old and be totally different. That is what I'm seeing in the message as well. So it's a very, 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 absolutely, and with such a high percentage strike rate when it goes through all the other races, that it, like I said, I've said to you before, it looks like they shut down the entire galaxy, the one we're in. I know that's a big ask, and I did say that, but really, if you're a good man and somebody come to you and said, "Listen, this is what's happened. If you keep breeding children with your own sperm, this is what is going to happen, without doubt," and laid down to you in front of you pictures of the barbarity that we're going to see. Some of what we are going to see will break our hearts. That's reality here. We are going to find the people we've trusted most have done the most barbaric thing. Having said that, I've also said to you, I'm the most least person you would ever expect to be giving the behaviour of those types of people a get out card, because I can tell you I had my mother murdered by the very same people. So that's the reality. I don't want to go there either, but the point is, what I'm trying to say here is it is absolutely dire, and it would affect every individual peoples on our planet if it was left to persist. And that is when leadership of one's country, when those that are entrusted to bring a civilization to its growth and understanding are in actual fact the ones that have got the problem. It's a no, you've gone. It's everything gone. And you wouldn't take too many photos or evidence to be put within a father who was bearing children to say that is going to happen. It may not happen to you, or it may not be your son, but your grandchildren's. And honestly, it wouldn't take too many men to realise that in actual fact what you're here is wiping out life, not just on the planet, but with the advanced technology. You've only got to see what we do now, what the bad people are doing with the technology now, to see the problem. It would be absolutely everywhere, every galaxy. And before I leave the globe, like I said, I would expect that the very same thing here is that it would have affected absolutely everybody across all the galaxies, and that given the evidence, it wouldn't take very much convincing to say, no, that's okay, fair enough, especially when the outcome is of such a galactic proportions, and it really is. That's what we're being told. So you could say, prior to moving away from the globe, I will say this cycle that we're shown before this, before the one we've just finished, right? So the Earth is shown to be standing straight like this, and it has to have Atlantis around the equator. And you could say, well, what are we doing there? What's happening there? And this is what I'm saying. The whole process here is to get people into a position where they can supply the other people beyond Earth with sperm where they can breed, where they can continue that breed without the issue. And in the motions that we're seeing here in the cycles of Earth, we're looking at this process taking 300 years. That the movement of the Earth from 10 degrees to 24 degrees, we're showing, and I've discussed it with you before, in the inserted image here of the Serapeum. That motion there is, in fact, a record of the motion of the axis of Earth moving out to 24 degrees. We are seeing that take 300 years. And they're saying it takes 300 years for this problem to manifest itself. I would see that we are seeing possibly the very same periods of time, if not longer, to breed them out. So in other words, as inherent as it got, placed in the right electromagnetic system, it takes that many generations going back in the other way to get rid of it out of the system. You know what I mean? So that it's as it was to be inherent in the first place over 300 years, that it's taking that many generations to work it out of the generations that we have here. So I'm not saying the people with crossed blood here are not going to be able to breed next year. I would see that what we're seeing is that that may be a case that, depending on what the mix of blood is, that if you keep mixing blood with white blood and the darker skin races, or Chinese, or anybody else for that matter, that anybody above there, above that line, that if the lineage is greater here, the longer you live here, you cannot reproduce. It drops off and drops off. And that's why, if we went to Bosnia, up here, in this area here, these areas here in Bosnia, and there's graveless or nameless tombstones there. That's exactly why, because there's no ancestry to read, you know, the name of the person, because there is no people coming after to read it. Nobody of their heritage. Given elements or given races above here, it may be just bang, no, you're going to get nothing, which is why we're seeing this race or the village people be taken in full, all of them. We are looking at, like I said, the mixed bloods being quite different. But for all those that we're looking at in this sector that are more than, 50, 60, 70% white people from Europe upwards of the Mediterranean, we're going to have a problem, which is why that other planet's here. I'll go into that in a minute. I think that pretty much discusses what we are seeing in the separation of the land masses here. They're telling us we were all affected quite differently, not just purely because we were different races, that we were in actual fact had situations where we're affected totally differently, purely because of the electromagnetics of the system we're in at the time the galaxy, or at the time the solar system was hit, or the planets were hit with this problem. You could say, why do I think it's not Nibiru getting flicked out that's caused the problem? I don't think that's at all. I think what's happened there is Nibiru was actually a dual star system, and that Nibiru, as part of the cure and the cycle here, was removed. It was made a single star system. I would also expect that we're seeing there at times, like I said, without doubt, Atlantis had to be installed. And I cannot see that you're doing anything with Atlantis installed at any point in time, in any cycle, without there being knowledge of why it's there. You can't really hide the thing going across an ocean. It has to be a pretty modern world, you know, so you could say, well, if that's the case, where are we developing in the case that Earth is in that cycle, that we are sitting here with Atlantis here at any time, which is what's happening, and it's only 6,000 years of the entire 44,000 years that it is in actual fact the case. So where are you developing the good seed? This is a very good question, isn't it? Because the people here are not going to be silly. They're going to know what Atlantis is about. They're going to know about the cycles. They're going to know about everything. That is why we're seeing, once again, I'll brought back to this, it's not a megalith by any stretch. It's only a couple of metres wide, maybe 2-3 metres wide here. But it's showing us this as the movement away. One of the rings of rotation, or one of the cycles, when we move away from Earth towards the outer ring of rotation, this in actual fact is reflecting a movement of 3,000 years and a lifting and a skew of the plane of rotation of Earth around the Sun. And it just bounces it up over the ring of rotation of Mars and goes back down. It's actually in a situation where it's laid down like this with the pole pointing at the Sun the whole time. One pole, the South Pole, in our case it will be the South Pole next time, in about 16,000 years, reading the cycle as they've left it here in the way it's written. But there's 7 worlds here. This is what I'm saying, we've got other ones here. I would think that this one being flat is probably telling us that there's a one world or one planet that we go to that sits straight. And these other ones here are of varying size and varying rotational speeds, varying angles of the axis, and such things as well. So we're getting more told to us here. I would also say that from an astrophysical point of view, or from a physics perspective, when I've spoken of this, I do want to mention that this rotation here, like I said, it's with the Earth laid flat. The Earth spins around like this, around the Sun, and it has a pole always pointing towards the Sun. It's how the water is emptied out of the planet here, because we are going to take water into the planet in our cycle to fudge our weight and make it not, spin so quickly. This is one of the things they're doing. This one here, the planet is laid flat. In other words, it's tilted over on its axis like that, and as it moves out through the solar system, it still keeps going around the Sun, but the plane of travel, or the plane that it's on the horizontal plane, initially for about 1,500 years, this cycle then takes over as a skewed plane, and then it goes back to on the horizontal plane for 1,500 years, but it never ever stops pointing that pole, no matter whether it goes through that bit or on a horizontal plane. That is used to empty the planet, but it's empty Earth of water. But like I said, that'll be in over 21,000 years' time. That will be when that goes click and does that bit. The reason I wanted to show you that is mostly that, though. I would see that representative of exactly that, the worlds beyond in different realms. So you'll have one of these here, or any one of them, or multiple ones of them, doing that 7,000 year loop that we've just done. Okay? One other matter. One thing I wanted to cover before we discussed the movement of that planetary body, this one here near the Sun, is back to this point here when we're talking about the Earth in its current cycle is going to be pulled up very quickly in here. It's because the North Pole of Earth is attracted to, I would imagine from an electromagnetic perspective, the fact that we're looking at the South Pole and North Pole of the Sun, very same thing. It has to have such a thing to generate such a field in the first place. So I've shown these just to be this height, albeit against the Sun is very, very high. I've also said that when we come back into this one, it's a very, very narrow horizontal band, and it pulls the planet straight because it's very, very narrow. Here it isn't, it's shown to be a lot wider. And I said that in this one here, There are cycles that are 65,000 years long where it comes up within this plane. 65,000 years long because you do not need water in there, whereas you do there. There, the planet is gripped and rotated very quickly. Here it isn't. But I would still expect the movement into here. We still got an issue, not necessarily wanting or requiring Atlantis because we're within the wideband, but it would probably still stand straight. I actually still think we're in meshed planes, so if you've got opposing fields, it's still going to stand straight on its axis, but where we're getting our seasonal changes, possibly that it can go up and down within that donut field, and that we're getting our seasonal changes within there by a movement like that, up and down within that donut field, as opposed to having a tilt of the axis. I'm not 100%. I thought that the physics of that might be the case and that you people in the know might ponder that when you do your modelling. I want to go back now and I'll discuss the moon cycle. Now, I bought a very, very simple diagram. I'm very good at simple diagrams. I brought the sun up with the horizontal plane here, and what I wanted to show you is how we are being told the other body that's near the sun is going to be moved in the 3 months leading up to Christmas. The problem is with our approach to the horizontal plane, the Earth's movement is up very, very rapidly, very, very quickly, because it is coming into that portion that's a narrow field, not the donut field. The donut field gives you your chance for your electromagnetics. Like I said, I'm not 100% sure whether the moon's in that cycle or not. It's a bit tricky. Well, it's not the one we're approaching. This is the one we're going to worry about. This one here. So I'm going with this. So what happens? If you feel the shiver in my voice, there isn't the event, although that is somewhat daunting to say the least. It's actually quite chilly here this morning, and I've got the blanket or a blanket covering where the sun would be coming from. So excuse me, just when we're talking of the sun. So in essence, what I believe we're going to see is this moon or body that we see near the sun is going to be moved in like this way, on the horizontal plane in front of the sun, and it'll be at its closest to the sun, so it's smallest in here. Okay, and it'll be in sync with Earth. Once it gets in here, it'll stay in line with the Earth. As Earth rotates around the sun, this will stay in line. And you'll think, how the hell is that happening? Because when that happens, it will not move Earth. This is what my thought process was. Why? It's going to take so long. It's going to be bloody freezing. It'll freeze anyway. Then I thought, no, it can't take that long, and it was this other crop circle. I just wanted to go through this process first. I'll show you the crop circle in a minute. But what I'm seeing there is this. So we will sit like that for a month, and then for a month it'll move out this way. It'll still be cycling the sun as well, but just in time. And then for a month it moves out like that, and it goes back within a month. So it's a 15-day approach or a 16-day approach, and then a 16-day back. Once that happens, that's Christmas. We're in plane, we're lying flat with the Earth's axis straight, we're locked in with the plane. By then the oceans have lowered, the Earth's speed of rotation is that we just pick up and just keep cruising along without getting killed. That's how they do it. I will show you where the timing that we get written for that is yet another crop circle, but I believe it tells us exactly the same thing. From the point of that, this body then will skip across, use the 3,000 year cycle type of movement. Laid flat, I would expect this body here is not going to be spinning like Earth like this, around like that. It's going to possibly be going that way, I'm not 100% sure, but I would expect we're going to see some tricky stuff when this thing starts moving across the solar system, because it'll do it without moving Earth. That's exactly why they'll move it across for a given point in time and then flick it over the way we're shown with that this megalith here. It's going to be exactly the same as this. It'll be that process that they use to get that body out beyond Earth when it's on the horizontal plane. That's the other reason we're being shown that process there, okay? And where we're seeing this is taking 3,000 years, right? Well, they're probably saying, listen, we'll be out there in 3 months, you know, and then 3 months we'll see them start standing up straight. And I'll tell you about one other problem here that you would, if you're a physicist, you'd be saying, brain, you've got something wrong, it doesn't work, does, and you're not going to understand that. When we're looking at the rings of rotation of Earth around the Sun, we've been told things about how the mass of Earth is sped through space by the rotating planes. We need to cover one aspect there. Now, just before I move away and show you the crop circle that gave me the timing I would expect, I'm sure it's going to be correct. I wanted to talk to you about this because if we see the ring of Mars here, the ring of rotation of Mars, we know, and we've discussed already, is the mass of Mars is already moving through the ring of rotation of Mars at 1.8 of our years every year, so it's going too quick. Once the other planet that we're seeing near the Sun has moved to take up a rotation, I think we're being told from the inner ring of rotation here that Earth, when we are on the horizontal plane, its movement through space is quicker, probably far quicker than what it would normally be. You know, it's about a year, it's about 11.5 months, that's what they say that's going to take to go around there once when we're on the horizontal plane. I would expect that that's probably going to stay the same. It's the rotation, it won't be a whole lot different, but the rotation of the Earth itself is the biggest problem. But I've already just said to you that they're going to time this so that the inner planet is in line with that. Well, the inner planet, to be in line with it, has to be the same mass. So therefore, how can it come out here and spin through Earth? I mean, it's going to go just as quick out here. We're told Earth itself, when it moves further out here, its rotation out here goes flat stick. And this is what I'm saying, that I think once we put what we're seeing here, is when that planet is jumped over the ring of rotation of Earth and placed on Mars, it's a combined mass. And the combined mass and rotation of both of them flowing around here is how they're going to achieve, you know, it may not even be that, it might be the other way. It might actually have one of those bodies, if you're running a modelling situation here in an astrophysical sense. The motions of the Earth lay both on these 4,000, I know that's wrong there, it should say 4,000, the 4,000 cycle here, and these other movements here and other cycles are telling you about the placement here of the rotating, the axial plane of the rotating body. So I'm going to be aware of that when you're modelling. I would expect what we're seeing there is possibly the Moon and Mars are going to be laid slightly differently on the plane, and it's going to be made work like that. It's going to be more like an atom. If you can understand what I mean, that the cycling body around that body might be a totally different concept of understanding of our own moon and the way it works. Out there, they may say yes, but what we do is we get the mass on the ring of rotation of Mars, and instead of it, immediate thought is it's going to sit up like this. Well, maybe not. It's going to sit like this, laid flat and going around that way, with the moon, Mars being the moon, going around that way. I don't know, you know, this is what I mean. It could be whatever we're going to see here, I would expect. There's the people that are on our planet that can't breed, we're going to be offered a chance to go, I would expect to there. I don't think we're going to leave the solar system. I would expect at this point the transit will be just here to here, and we've got to get more clean and cleansed before, you know, the Juno leaves the solar system and takes up one of these other places on the Earth. But having said that, where did the people go from, the Norwegian whaling town? Where did they go? Because they're obviously not in the solar system, are they? Or are they? Are they sitting up here on Mars underground, just waiting? Like I said, Mars is not, I've said to it, it's not that it's uninhabitable. It just cannot hold an ocean because it's going too fast through space. So it would have to be slowed by the other body in comparison and used in a method so that it too fudges the system in the way that it moves. And I say that because in actual fact it's got to be the same mass of Earth to retain a rotation on the inner ring where we are. Even whether we're on the ring or not, it's in actual fact would have to be the same mass. And here finally is our crop circle. I'm sorry this video has taken so long, but it is immensely difficult to explain something that's complicated. And I try not to make it complicated so other people can understand, but I still have to get to a point of talking to people about something. I really, to be honest with you, I'm not a physicist or an astrologist. I'm just merely seeing what I'm seeing here and trying to relay what I'm seeing. I'm seeing here that we're getting told we're going to move the body in from the side, in other words on a horizontal plane, and it's going to sit within the sun, in front of the sun at some point. Okay? The timing for such a process, I believe, is as such. If we count these modules around here all the way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. How many days does November have in it? 31. The 16th of November is there, which is my birthday. That's the 17th of November. So what's happening here is we're seeing from the middle of from November, October will be like so, okay? Then November is when it'll start moving towards us and the body will start coming at the planet until its peak where it's going to be this big against the sun. So I'm saying to you, I was thinking it's going to be bloody cold if this thing's going to sit there like that for 3 months. So this is the timing. So we're really looking at, it's going to come pretty quick at us in this period of time. But in that period of time, you can see by the size of it, it's not going to block as much sun. So they're telling us there, and if you run that through the modelling systems that you've got, that will give you the answer that you seek. You're astrologists, physicists, all such things. I'm not that. I can tell you that that's what that means though. So that's what we're seeing. By the end of the month of November, we'll be back to being this again until December, and I would expect at some point here it's going to be switched, and it won't be the big planet, it'll be the moon that will be back. Our moon that we currently have is going to be moved away in this process. So the moon will then be put in closer on, well, not closer way in here because the moon's way smaller than this. That's bigger than Earth, that body. That's way bigger than Earth, I believe. Therefore it must be as light as, it might be a bit bigger, which is why we're seeing this movement across there. I would also expect that these be reflective of the rings. I'm also aware that we are currently going through a stage where every other planet is on the same side of the sun, probably the opposite side than that body is at the moment, I would expect. But that's what we'll see, and once they move it back, they'll replace it with a moon that's closer to us, but and then we'll see the solar eclipses. But the solar eclipse will be on the equator, and that's all that they want from that point. This has to happen like this and cover way far more of the sun, far closer, to deflect the horizontal beam from being able to rip us up out of space and stop us incurring all those high speeds that I've spoken of till this point. One last thing I'd like to cover before I finish up is that I've spoken of the mutations what we've seen within the northern European races. And I have touched on other behaviour and possibility of giantism. It may not seem as critical a situation. Certainly I see with the placement up here that that's by far the biggest problem. But here, if in actual fact that was not just one that was a one-off, but an absolute hereditary situation brought by an electromagnetic field, like the one that we're about to incur here, which is why they want to move us away. Imagine if it was not a one-off, an inherent thing that every generation was a foot higher. Within 40 to 50 years, you couldn't walk anywhere. Nothing would be useful. There would be not a house you could build, there couldn't be a road, a tunnel, cars, buses. Do you understand the situation? So we're seeing here another inherent thing. Not only that, but we also see when we look at Sir Edmund Hillary's climbing from Mount Everest. He goes up to Mount Everest here, and what goes down? He's got footprints in the snow in front of him. He's the first guy to get there, you know. This is the story here. We are told in North America that we've got the Yeti. We're told in Australia we have the Yowie. We have these creatures. We're talking about multiple mutations across all the races because all of the planets were affected, but because of the rotational Earth in its realm, and the other two planets, possibly one with a moon, which is why I'm seeing that possibly reflected in the design of what they're about to do, that's what was gotten rid of, a planet and its moon, and that's what the situation was. So like I said, we're being created. Sometimes our planet here is creating a learning bunch like us. Other times it's putting people here that are very well, truly know exactly what's going down, and the process that we've just had Earth do is happening on one of the other 7 planets. I'm pretty sure I've finished everything we needed to discuss today, so I'll leave it at that. And like I said, from an astrophysical point of view, there are some things there that I can see with the movement of Earth, or the movement of the other body, the new Earth. It's ironic because, once again, I have mentioned Sylvie Ivanova's work. I've loved her work for a long time, and here I'm saying the word New Earth, and that's her channel. And yet that's exactly what's going down here. This planet is going to be the new Earth of the people, I would expect, beyond here that cannot breed any longer. And we're going to learn a lot. We're going to learn a hell of a lot, I can tell you. And our continents are not going to be looking like this, and we could possibly imagine that the Great Wall of China and this impact here is possibly telling us of some movement of land mass in these areas of the globe as well. So I'm sure we'll get a very full idea of what's going down here, and we are all I guess really the one thing I will say, and if I haven't already said it, I'm absolutely certain that what we're being told is when our Earth stands straight like this next year, that the very switch within the human genome that causes this issue, as quickly as it is switched on, or its movement towards the plane here turns it on, because it's a slow process, when it's across there and it's like that, I believe that's what we're being told. Just as quickly as we cannot breed on this planet with the straight axis, it is also bang, it just doesn't happen. And that is also something I'm seeing, you know, within the mixed races, which is a really, really good thing as well. So, you know, it really all up. Honestly, we've got so much to look forward to, and all those people, I'll be honest with you, that cross that line and are those people, they will be standing in their same shoes, but they will not be the same person. They will probably not even believe they've had the ability to do what they've done themselves, to be honest. It's going to be as daunting as this lesson was to learn and relay, teach, if that's the word, I don't know. It's an amazing thing to be put in a position to tell you what I'm telling you. It just is the way it is. And then to find the very earth you sit on has a body coming from the sun that turns around on your birthday and goes back the other way. So maybe I had a birthday along the way there somewhere where it made a significant difference to my life. Who knows? It's a weird thing to happen. But anyway, that's all from Brian Whitten and E.T. Art. Have a nice day. And like I said, from where I'm standing, I would expect everybody's got something to look forward to, and we will leave the old earth behind, and we will take our new earth and our modified earth and spin on in, really spin into a new year. I can tell you it's going to be very, very different. We're going to learn a lot. That's all from me. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.